But let me be very, very clear. Chris Paul does not deserve that.
Chris Paul didn't just retire, he was pushed out. After 21 seasons and 12 All-Star selections, the point guard walked away from the game he loved. But what the Clippers did to him at 3 in the morning changed everything. The announcement that shook the NBA. On February 13th, 2026, one of the greatest point guards to ever lace up a pair of sneakers decided that enough was enough. Chris Paul, the man they call the point god, the floor general who spent more than 2 decades orchestrating some of the most beautiful basketball this league has ever seen, officially walked away from the game. And when I say walked away, I don't mean he faded quietly into the sunset the way most legends hope to go out. No. What happened to Chris Paul in his final season was anything but quiet, anything but graceful, and anything but what a player of his caliber and his legacy deserved. Now, before we get into the messy details, before we talk about the drama with the Clippers, the coaching staff conflicts, the 3 a.m. dismissal that had the entire basketball world up in arms and losing their minds on social media, let's start at the very beginning. Because to truly understand why Chris Paul retired the way he did, you need to understand where his head was at before the 2025-26 season even tipped off. It was the summer of 2025. Chris Paul had just wrapped up a full 82-game season with the San Antonio Spurs, proving to absolutely everybody who had written him off that at 39 years old, he could still contribute at a high level as a veteran leader. The man was not washed. He was not done. He was not some broken down relic of a bygone era collecting checks and riding the bench. He still had gas left in the tank, and he had the numbers to prove it. But here's the thing about Chris Paul that people sometimes forget. Basketball was never the only thing that mattered to him. His family, his wife Jada, his son Chris II, his daughter Cameron, they were always right there at the very top of the priority list, right next to the game itself. And after spending 6 consecutive years bouncing around from city to city, from Oklahoma City to Phoenix to Golden State to San Antonio, all while his wife and children remained planted in Los Angeles, something deep inside of him shifted in a way that could no longer be ignored.
At the most, a year. I just finished my 20th season, which is a blessing in itself.
And that right there tells you everything you need to know about where Chris Paul's mind was heading into what would become his final year. In the National Basketball Association, he sat down for an interview in July of 2025 and told the world plain as day, clear as crystal, that he had 1 more year left in him, maybe, at the most.
Yeah, I've been in the NBA for more than half of my life, which is a blessing.
Think about that for a second. Let that really sink in. More than half of his entire life on this earth had been spent as a professional basketball player. From the moment he was drafted 3rd overall by the New Orleans Hornets back in 2005, basketball consumed everything. The practices, the film sessions, the travel, the games, the pressure, the expectations, the injuries, the rehab, all of it, every single day for 20 straight years. And after 2 full decades of that grind, 2 decades of giving his body and his mind and his soul to this sport, he was finally ready to acknowledge out loud that the clock was winding down. But it wasn't just the physical toll that was wearing on him. It wasn't just the aches and pains that come with playing professional basketball into your 40s. It was the emotional toll of being separated from the people he loved the most in this world.
It's definitely these years you do not get back with your kids, with your family.
Those words hit different when you really sit with them and think about what Chris Paul had sacrificed over the course of those 6 years away from home. 6 straight years of missed birthdays and missed school events. 6 years of missed bedtime stories and Saturday morning pancakes with the kids. 6 years where his grandmother back in North Carolina, the woman who watched every single game he ever played no matter what time it came on, had to settle for seeing her grandson through a television screen instead of wrapping her arms around him and telling him how proud she was.
So my granny, who watches every single game that I play every single night, those moments, I just don't get to see her and hug her.
And so, when the offseason came around and Chris Paul officially became an unrestricted free agent, there was really only one move that made any kind of sense for a man in his position. He signed a 1-year deal with the Los Angeles Clippers, the franchise where he had spent some of the best years of his entire career from 2011 to 2017, the team that was located right there in the city of Los Angeles where his family had been waiting for him for 6 long years. It was supposed to be the perfect ending to a legendary career, a homecoming, a farewell tour in front of the fans who had watched him blossom into one of the most iconic Clippers in franchise history, alongside the family he had missed so desperately for so long. But when they asked him point blank what the plan was, where he was going to play, even Chris Paul himself didn't have an answer ready.
I honestly don't know. Seriously, I don't. It's actually a weird place to be in because for my entire career, I've pretty much always known.
For a man who built his entire legendary career on control, on knowing exactly where every player on the court was supposed to be at every single moment of every possession, on orchestrating offenses with the precision of a surgeon and the creativity of an artist, admitting that he didn't have a clue what came next was a level of vulnerability we rarely ever saw from the point guard.
I do. My wife and my kids are in LA, and I mean, I say this just about every time I talk, but the past 6 seasons, I've played in where I was in Oklahoma first.
6 different cities in 6 years. Oklahoma City, Phoenix for 3 seasons, Golden State for a year, then San Antonio, city after city after city. And through all of it, through every trade and every free agency decision and every new locker room, Jada, Chris Deseg, and Cameron stayed back in Los Angeles, waiting for him to come home.
My wife and my kids have been in LA all 6 of those years. So that's tough.
And then he said the thing that really put it all into perspective, the thing that made everybody listening understand that family wasn't just a nice talking point for Chris Paul, wasn't just something he said because it sounded good in an interview. It was the foundation of absolutely everything.
I love to play basketball, but I love my kids and my family more.
And look, by November of 2025, sources confirmed what everyone already suspected. This was going to be Chris Paul's last season. The 12-time All-Star, the 11-time All-NBA selection, the 9-time All-Defensive Team honoree, the member of the NBA's 75th anniversary team, was going to hang it up after one final ride. The plan was simple: play out the season in LA, soak in the love from the fans, be there for his kids every single night after every game, and walk away on his own terms with his head held high. But here's where things took a turn that nobody, and I mean absolutely nobody, saw coming. Because what was supposed to be a beautiful farewell season turned into one of the ugliest, most disrespectful endings to a Hall of Fame career that the NBA has ever witnessed. And to understand how it all fell apart so spectacularly, we need to talk about what really happened inside that Clippers locker room. The Clippers chaos and the 3 a.m. dismissal. Now, let's set the scene here because context matters. It's late November 2025, and the Los Angeles Clippers are in absolute freefall. We're talking about a team that stumbled out of the gate and face-planted into the hardwood with a dismal 6-20 start to the season. 6 wins, 20 losses. That is not just bad basketball. That is historically, embarrassingly bad basketball. And when a team is losing at that kind of rate, when the wheels are coming off the bus and the bus itself is engulfed in flames, tensions inside that locker room start to boil over in ways that nobody can contain. Now here's the thing about Chris Paul that everybody who has ever shared a locker room with him already knows full well. The man is vocal, he is intense, he is relentless in his pursuit of perfection. He demands excellence from every single person around him, from the star players to the end of the bench guys, from the coaching staff to the training staff, and he does not care one bit if that approach rubs people the wrong way. It's the very same quality that made him the president of the NBA Players Association for nearly a decade, from 2013 all the way to 2021. It's the very same quality that allowed him to walk into any locker room in America and command instant respect from everyone in the building. But it's also the very same quality that, in this particular situation with this particular team, created a friction so intense that it burned the entire thing to the ground. Reports indicate that tensions escalated dramatically between Paul and head coach Tyronn Lue, along with associate head coach Jeff Van Gundy, over team strategies, practice schedules, defensive schemes, and what was described as Chris Paul's overly critical tone toward both players and members of the coaching staff. Now, the Clippers didn't just have any ordinary coaching staff. This was a veteran-heavy group that included Ty Lue, Jeff Van Gundy, Brian Shaw, and Larry Drew. These are men who have coached at the highest levels of professional basketball for decades. And when Chris Paul started pushing for more practices, calling for additional team meetings, and offering his own strategic suggestions that sometimes directly contradicted what the coaches had already put in place, some of those coaches didn't just not appreciate it, they resented it deeply. Kendrick Perkins, the former NBA center, who has never been one to bite his tongue or sugarcoat anything, went on the Road Trippin' podcast and revealed what he'd been hearing from people inside the Clippers organization. And what he said painted a picture that was far more damning than anything the public had heard up to that point.
He was doing stuff behind T. Lue's back, going to players, whispering, saying things and causing turmoil.
Now think about what Perkins is saying right there. Really think about it. Chris Paul, the man who was brought into this organization specifically to be a veteran mentor, to be a steadying influence, to be an extension of the coaching staff, was allegedly going behind the head coach's back and giving players completely different instructions than what the coaching staff had drawn up.
When the team is already struggling and going through a lot.
And that's the part that makes it even worse. The team was already drowning. They were already 6-20. The last thing a struggling team needs is division between its veteran leader and its coaching staff. And yet, according to Perkins, that's exactly what was happening behind closed doors.
The last thing you need is a guy that you brought in to be an extension of the coach, to be a voice, a positive voice in the locker room, to be a negative voice in the locker room.
And that right there is the crux of the entire issue. The Clippers signed Chris Paul to be a calming presence, a wise and experienced veteran who could guide the younger players and support the coaching staff during the rough patches. Instead, what they got was a Hall of Famer who couldn't help himself, who saw problems everywhere he looked and felt absolutely compelled to fix them, even when nobody in that organization asked him to. Perkins then gave a very specific and very revealing example that illustrates exactly how these situations were playing out during actual games.
They're on the road. They're playing the game. They up by double digits.
The team had a comfortable lead. Everything was going according to plan. The coaches had things under control. And then things started to unravel the way they always do in the NBA when a team goes on a run.
The team comes back. I believe it was Memphis. It might have been Dallas. Memphis or Dallas game. Coach Van Gundy calls the defensive scheme.
So the opposing team cuts into the lead. The Clippers call timeout. Van Gundy draws up a specific defensive scheme and tells one of the younger players exactly what he needs to do when they get back out on the floor. The coach calls the play, and the players are supposed to execute it. Simple enough, right?
They break out of the timeout. Chris Paul goes to the young fella and tell him, no, you need to do this.
But that's not what happened. Chris Paul overrode the coach's instructions. He walked right up to that young player as soon as they broke the huddle and told him to do something completely different from what Van Gundy had just drawn up on that clipboard.
He does what Chris Paul tells him to do, and he get his ass cooked.
And of course, the young player listened to Chris Paul. Why wouldn't he? This is a future first ballot Hall of Famer, a 12-time All-Star, one of the smartest basketball minds to ever walk the earth telling you what to do. But the result was an absolute disaster. The player got cooked, the lead continued to evaporate, and the coaching staff was left wondering why their instructions were being undermined in real time by a player who was supposed to be reinforcing their authority. According to Perkins, this was not a one-time occurrence. This was not an isolated incident that got blown out of proportion. When he was asked directly if Paul had been warned multiple times about this kind of behavior, Perkins didn't hesitate.
Yes, they have had meetings with CP3 multiple times. Multiple is twice, right?
Several meetings, several warnings, several conversations behind closed doors where the coaching staff sat Chris Paul down and told him this behavior had to stop. And still, the behavior continued. Details also emerged of a specific confrontation on a team flight where Van Gundy accused Paul of overstepping by suggesting a defensive switch involving Kawhi Leonard during a loss to the Dallas Mavericks, telling Leonard to guard Klay Thompson differently than what the coaching staff had assigned. Paul admitted to offering his input, but denied formally changing any defensive assignments. Either way, the trust between the coaching staff and Chris Paul had been completely and irreparably shattered. And so, on December 3rd, 2025, at 3 o'clock in the morning during a road trip with the team nowhere near Los Angeles, the Los Angeles Clippers made the decision to send Chris Paul home. No advance warning, no face-to-face meeting, no courtesy call from the front office to let him prepare. Just a message delivered in the dead of night telling a 21-year veteran, a future Hall of Famer, arguably the most popular player in the entire history of the franchise, to pack his bags and go. Stephen A. Smith absolutely erupted when the news broke on his radio show.
It's a story that happened overnight, wee hours of the morning. Chris Paul, the one stellar point guard in the NBA.
And it wasn't just the fact that they let him go that had Stephen A. furious. It was the manner in which they did it. The complete and total lack of respect for a player who had given his prime years to that organization.
Chris Paul does not deserve that. You go a flight home, you go back to Los Angeles, you call him into the office, you work out a buyout.
That's the part that stings the most. You don't send a legend home at 3 a.m. like he's some undrafted rookie who got caught breaking curfew. You wait until the team gets back to Los Angeles. You sit him down in a comfortable office, face to face, man to man. You treat him with the dignity and the respect that 21 years of service demands.
You let him part ways with his dignity and you call it a day. After 21 freaking years, You don't do that to him.
Chris Paul himself broke his silence on December 10th, calling the split crazy and expressing deep disappointment, telling reporters that he didn't want to see it end like this. The man came home. He specifically chose the Clippers so he could be close to his family during his final season in the league. And instead of the farewell tour he envisioned, instead of the standing ovations and the tribute videos and the emotional goodbye, he got a dismissal delivered in the middle of the night like he meant absolutely nothing to that franchise. The final chapter and the real reason he walked away. So after the Clippers unceremoniously sent Chris Paul home in early December, the entire basketball world waited to see what would happen next. Would another team step up and pick him up? Would a legitimate contender come calling, recognizing the value of having one of the smartest basketball minds in history on their roster for a playoff push? Would the Los Angeles Lakers, the team where his lifelong friend and banana boat brother LeBron James was still suiting up, give Chris Paul one last shot at the championship ring that had eluded him for his entire career? The answer to every single one of those questions turned out to be no, and the reason why tells you everything you need to know about why Chris Paul ultimately made the decision to walk away from professional basketball for good. On February 4th, 2026, nearly 2 months after sending him home, the Clippers officially traded Chris Paul to the Toronto Raptors as part of a 3-team salary dump deal. Now let's be absolutely clear about what this trade was. The Toronto Raptors did not want Chris Paul the basketball player. They wanted the financial flexibility and cap space manipulation that came with moving salary around. Chris Paul was nothing more than a financial instrument in this transaction, a contract to be shuffled, a line item on a balance sheet, and everybody involved knew it. Paul never reported to Toronto. He didn't fly to Canada. He didn't put on a Raptors jersey. He didn't participate in a single practice or shoot around. He didn't do any of the things that a player who still wanted to compete would do. And on February 13th, 2026, just 9 days after the trade, the Toronto Raptors waived him. Hours later, Chris Paul opened up his Instagram account and told the entire world what we had all been waiting to hear. In his retirement statement, the point guard poured his heart out for everybody to see. He talked about the overwhelming gratitude he felt for a career that spanned more than 21 years. He talked about how basketball had been the very first relationship he ever knew, how his father introduced him to the game, and it became woven into the very DNA of his existence. He talked about the importance of showing up, about how the true leaders and fighters in this world understand that just being present is half the battle. But then he got to the part that mattered most, the part that peeled back all the layers and revealed the real reason behind everything. He wrote that this last season, he knew in his heart that he couldn't do it unless he was at home with his family. Those 6 years away from Los Angeles, away from Jada, away from his children, were a lot of sacrifice for all of them, and he knew that had to come to an end. And now, he said, he knew wholeheartedly and without a single shred of doubt that the best teammate he could be was to Jada, Chris the 2, and Cam. That's it right there. That is the real reason Chris Paul retired from the NBA, not the drama with the Clippers, not the coaching staff conflicts and the power struggles with Ty Lue and Jeff Van Gundy, not the humiliating 3 a.m. dismissal or the salary dump trade to Toronto. All of that was just the ugly backdrop to a decision that Chris Paul had already made in the deepest part of his heart long before any of that mess ever happened. The man was tired of being away from his family. He was exhausted from watching his kids grow up through FaceTime calls and text messages. He was done missing the moments that you can never get back, no matter how much money you make or how many all-star games you play in. Now, to be absolutely clear, what the Clippers did and how they handled the entire situation absolutely accelerated the timeline of his retirement. There is no question about that. When you look at how Lawrence Frank, the Clippers' president of basketball operations, managed this entire debacle, it is hard not to feel disgusted. This is the same Lawrence Frank who released a carefully crafted public statement saying that the organization was parting ways with Chris Paul, that they were grateful for his impact on the franchise, and that no one was blaming him for the team's underperformance. Stephen A. Smith had something very pointed to say about that statement.
Oh, shut the hell up. I don't want to hear that from Lawrence Frank. He's always got a great quote to give, willing to accept responsibility on paper.
And then came the reality check that cut right through all the public relations nonsense.
But in real life, it's always somebody else that's paying the price.
And Stephen A. is right about that, because Lawrence Frank has a long and well-documented history of making decisions that look progressively more terrible with every passing year. This is the man who traded away Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, along with Danilo Gallinari, 5 first-round draft picks and 2 pick swaps just to land Paul George alongside Kawhi Leonard, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the very same player who went on to become one of the most dominant forces in the entire NBA with the Oklahoma City Thunder. And what did the Clippers get in return for mortgaging their entire future, 5 years of Kawhi Leonard and Paul George playing together, and not a single NBA Finals appearance to show for any of it? 5 years of injuries, missed games, internal drama, and crushing playoff disappointment. And the bad decisions didn't stop there. The James Harden trade in October 2023 cost them multiple players, plus 4 picks and pick swaps. Then Paul George, frustrated by what he described as a disrespectful initial contract offer, left for the Philadelphia 76ers in 2024 with absolutely zero compensation, coming back to the Clippers. Then they traded away Norman Powell, a player who went on to average 25 points a game, starring for the Miami Heat, just to clear roster space for Bradley Beal and a 40-year-old Chris Paul. The decisions were so catastrophic that the Clippers essentially handed the Oklahoma City Thunder a dynasty's worth of draft capital through years of terrible asset management. But here's the thing that sits at the very center of this entire story. As ugly and as disrespectful as the Clippers situation was, Chris Paul did not retire because of Lawrence Frank or the front office. He didn't retire because Tyronn Lue stopped speaking to him. He didn't retire because Jeff Van Gundy confronted him on a team plane. All of those things happened, and every single one of them was wrong. But Chris Paul retired because he had spent 21 years giving every ounce of everything he had to this game, and he was finally ready to give that same energy and dedication to the people who mattered most. When you step back and look at what this man accomplished over the course of his career, the numbers are staggering. A player who finished with 12,552 career assists, second all-time behind only John Stockton. A player with 2,728 career steals, also second all-time to Stockton. A 12-time All-Star, an 11-time All-NBA selection, a 9-time All-Defensive Team member, a 5-time assists leader, a 6-time steals leader, a record for the most steals titles in league history, the 2006 Rookie of the Year, a 2-time Olympic gold medalist, a member of the NBA's 75th anniversary team, a man who won 65% of clutch games from 2008 to 2022, outpacing even LeBron James, a player who elevated every single team he ever played for, from turning the Hornets into a 56-win powerhouse to making the Clippers perennial contenders to leading the Suns to the NBA Finals in 2021. Did he win a championship? No, and that's going to be the asterisk that follows him into his Hall of Fame enshrinement. But the absence of a ring does not diminish what Chris Paul was. In his prime, he led the league in estimated plus-minus in 6 seasons between 2008 and 2018, with his 2008-09 campaign ranking as the 6th best single season ever by that metric. He retired as the only point guard in NBA history with 11 All-NBA selections alongside 20,000 points and 10,000 assists. By almost every statistical and analytical measure, he was one of the 5 greatest point guards to ever play this game. And when it was over, when the Raptors waived him and the door to his playing career officially closed for good, the basketball world responded with the love and respect he deserved. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver called him a true steward of the sport, praising his elite competitiveness and intense work ethic. LeBron James, his banana boat brother who had been by his side since the early 2000s, was among the first to respond, commenting on Paul's retirement post with nothing but love and admiration. And fans across the globe reflected on 2 decades of brilliance from a player who redefined what it meant to be a point guard in the modern NBA. So when people ask the question, when they sit around and debate and wonder why Chris Paul really retired, the answer is both simple and complicated at the same time. The simple answer is family. He said it himself, in his own words. The best teammate he could be now was to Jada, Chris II, and Cam. The complicated answer involves a franchise that didn't know how to treat a legend with the respect he had earned, a coaching staff that couldn't coexist with one of the most competitive minds in sports history, and a series of events that turned what should have been a beautiful goodbye into an embarrassing spectacle that nobody involved should feel proud of. Well, that's it for this video, but don't go anywhere because we've got plenty more heat for you. Just tap any of the cards on your screen right now and keep it locked.